How are you, ma'am?
I am good, thank you. How are you?
I am doing well. So today I'm really excited because we took a long hiatus thanks to COVID, and African American Voices in Charles County is making its triumphant return to the screen, and so I couldn't be more happy to have my first guest in our resurgence of African American Voices of Charles County. And I'll read just two things that we'll talk about a lot,
Okay.
right? But I first met you in 2017 when I joined the Charles County NAACP, and at the time you were the chair of the economic committee chair, and so. But then I learned more about you since then, and at that time, what I didn't know and what I know now is that you currently serve as the Director of Operations at the University of Maryland Charles Regional Medical Center. Now that's the long title of it, but it's our hospital down here. And even though that is incredible, and we'll talk about that journey today. We'll talk about the little steps, the little micro things that happen to get you to that place. But one of the things that I am most proud of you for, from the outside looking in, is you serve as the first African American elected as council person in the 133-year history of the town of La Plata.
Yes.
And that's incredible in my eyes. So we're going to talk about all of those things today.
Okay.
I thank you for your willingness to be here, to have a conversation about yourself. As we as we said a little earlier, a lot of times people are used to talking about things, but talking about themselves, especially in a personal matter, is usually not the easiest. And so I appreciate your willingness to participate in this and capture who you are and what you've done and what you bring to this county.
And I appreciate you thinking about me and considering me for your interview. I thought that was pretty awesome because I know you as well
Yes.
and the things that you're doing. So for you to think to want to interview me I thought it was pretty awesome.
Oh,
So thank you.
you've been on the list for a long time. Little did you know, whether you had run for council or not, I really do collect a list of names of individuals that I come across or that I interact with, and I realize what they're doing. I think being the vice president of the branch, I interact with so many people in so many different manner and different ways, and I realize that the average citizen doesn't know
Right.
that who they are, what they're doing, and how they push this county and change and do a lot of super dope things.
You've done an amazing job in that role as well, bringing a new voice and I'm going to say persona to the NAACP, not the typical things that the NAACP had done. You guys have branched off and done some amazing things and bringing awareness to the NAACP in a different light. And I really, really, that was evident in your prayer breakfast.
Yes.
Just seeing the caliber of individuals invited, the conversation. I was so in awe of that prayer breakfast when I attended under you and Diotha as president, you as vice president. Phenomenal job.
Thank you, and we appreciate it. We do. All right, so we're going to get to it. We are going to start from the very beginning. And now, the reason why I like to start all of these conversations at the very beginning is there are a lot of transplants to Charles County.
Yes.
There's also a lot of individuals who've lived here for a long time. And so I like to marry the two,
Sure.
so we can find out what this melting pot really looks like. So we're going to
Absolutely.
start from the beginning. Born and raised, where is that?
I will say that I was raised in Mississippi,
Mississippi, okay.
near Columbus Air Force Base. My father died when I was really young, so by my mom, who
Okay.
is just a phenomenal character.
Right.
She had me at a very young age, and just the strength and the courage that she had to be a young mom and and to raise me with such, some amazing values. You get these phone calls, you need to learn how to rest. And I'm like, children don't hear what you say as much as they see what you do.
Yeah.
I never saw you rest.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember my mother calling out from work,
Okay.
and I'm thinking, where did you think I would learn that?
Right.
And so she was phenomenal, smart, self-taught, a lot of things. No was not an option, and she taught me that very early. Failure was not an option, and, big girls don't cry.
Big girls don't cry.
Yeah, that was a curse and a blessing.
I was about to say that.
It was truly, because understanding, what that meant to her. That means something happened, get over it, keep moving. And that's how I basically lived my life. Something happens, don't waddle in it, get over it, keep moving. Big girls don't cry. Failure's not an option. And so learning that, the bar was always set high for me, not so much by my mom,
Okay.
but so much by me, because I knew that was the expectation. To do better, go further, not necessarily faster, but to be the very best that you can be. And that doesn't matter, what role you're playing. So understanding that, I've lived with that since I was 5 years old. Just imagine,
Yeah.
And I didn't realize the burden that it was until I was getting my doctorate. We'll talk about that.
And we will talk about that, because
So-
there's something I noticed about that, and when we get to that in a little bit. But so your mother obviously is a large source of inspiration
Oh,
for
absolutely.
you, and it's really interesting to hear that you say she of all people are the one telling you to rest, and you're saying, how can you tell me that?
Because I didn't see it.
I didn't see it, right? So I definitely understand that. I get the same call from my mom and my dad a lot, telling me to slow down, and I say, well, I don't. You neither one of you ever went at the pace you're
That's not
asking
what
me
I
to
saw.
go at. So I can only go that way. So Columbus, Mississippi, is that where you primarily stayed until you left, or that? And I say left meaning like graduated high school.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What
It-
was Columbus, Mississippi like for you?
So at the time that I lived there, it was community.
Okay.
It was community. And wow, I thank God every single day for the old people in my neighborhood. I tell him, I said, I've had favor on my life all of my life. Those old people spoke into me, they sowed into me, they saw me. You better not step out of line, because come here. What are you doing playing with that kid? What are you doing? Aren't you supposed to be doing these things? They watched me. And then after they chastised me, they would sow into me. You're going to do something with your life. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. I had a kindergarten teacher. This lady lived about 5 blocks from me, but she would send her kids, her daughters, to pick me up 5 blocks away to walk me back to church with her.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
this is what she saw in me.
Saw something.
So she took me to church. I tell my grandmother, grandmother's deceased now, but I say, Grandma, and I was just telling her yesterday, I said, thank you for giving me God for myself. I don't think that we are a professional being, spiritual being, personal being. I'm one.
Right.
I am a spiritual being that does all of these other things. And I thank those folk, right? So it was community. Everybody looking out for each other. Our next door neighbor, if she cooked for all of her kids, and it's just me and my mom, she cooked enough to come out the back door, knock on our back door and say, hey, I cooked enough for you guys.
Yeah.
It was community.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how on Friday nights, everybody liked to talk about the Friday night lights.
Right.
When the lights went out, when the lights came on, you went home. But on Friday nights, not really. Those folks sat on the porch
Yeah.
They might order something from a restaurant and have it picked up by somebody going in a cab, and we'd sit outside playing ball under the street lights, running through the mosquito fog,
Right.
and listening to music. And I told my mom, I said, if you passed away, I don't think I could ever listen to music again. Every song that I listened to has a special meaning. My mother and I, Friday nights, she'd get paid, we'd walk to the music store, she'd get an album. I could only get a 45.
Right, okay.
But thankfully,
there's a line in the sand. Right.
So thankfully she got an album that I enjoyed, or
Right.
we'd walk to get our hair done, and we'd walk back. And that was community, and we felt safe doing that.
And everything, what it sounds like to me is, when you say community, it sounds like everything was literally self-contained. So far, I haven't heard anything further than this 5 or 6 block radius tops, but walking to get what you need and feeling safe in those spaces.
But not only that, they were invested. They were invested in the kids. Neighbors were invested in each other. So unlike today,
Yeah.
you know, the kids in my community, they couldn't get away with doing something wrong. You know, there were 3 chastisements coming down the road. If the first neighbor caught it, she's gonna talk loud enough for the next neighbor to hear it. They're talking about you bad enough. So when your mama got home, the story was really big.
Way out of
you know.
Right.
And so it was not just the diameter. It wasn't the radius.
Yeah.
It was the investment, the personal investment. Some of those women didn't have children, but they were mothers to us. Some of us didn't live around our grandparents, so the grandparents were grandparents to us. Mr. Howell, I would have to speak about Mr. Howell.
Mr. Howell.
He was the first business owner I knew. Black male, had a little bodega on the corner, and he didn't have kids of his own, but every kid could come to that store and maybe get 1 free cookie.
Okay.
But Mr. Howell, because I say I've had favor on my life, was invested in me. I got sick and my mother had to work. Mr. Howell came in that house. He brought me hot soup. He brought me a soda, and he brought me cookies. He made sure that I was okay. He came back. He brought me lunch. He came back. He brought me dinner. That was 3 days of me being sick.
Wow.
That this old man walked across the street to look in on me. Nobody asked him to.
He just did it.
He just
knew.
did it.
Wow.
He just did it. And I could sit in that swing with him. I love sitting around old people and gleaning that wisdom from them. I could sit on the porch with him in his swing. He'd give me, you know, at that time, stage planks. There was a big cookie.
Okay.
And he'd give me a cookie, of course, give me a soda.
Right.
And he'd rock in the chair, and I'd sit in the swing, and we'd talk.
So let me ask you this. Hindsight being 2020 and having the wisdom of years, what do you think it was that drew the people around you, in your community and your neighborhood to you? Was it a personal relationship that your mom had cultivated with these adults, or was it really just the community saw something in this little girl?
They had a relationship with my mother, but I say it's God's favor.
Yeah.
Because every single thing, there's not one thing, and don't you dare make me cry, there's not one thing that those folk spoke into my life that I didn't carry forward. And when I accomplished it, I'm like, I hope you're proud of me.
Yeah.
I did what you asked me to do.
Yeah.
I hope you're proud of me because I've done this and nobody else did.
Yeah.
So, and I'm forever grateful. I don't forget them, Joe. I don't forget anything they said. I don't forget anything they did. None of it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The things they taught me about money, taking care of my things.
And I'm
You
glad
know.
I'm definitely glad to say that, because there's a hearing what the early part of your life looked like and sounds like. When I'm researching you to guide my questions and what we're going to talk about, I feel like there's nothing else for me to talk about right now, right? Like I see the passion and the tears and the weight of everything they poured into you. I see it. I see the thread that weaves through your life, especially when you talk about money and what to do with it. Like
Yeah.
that pops up a lot
Yeah.
in the things that you've done, the way you volunteered, the leadership roles you've had. Your degrees are in business, like all of that.
Yeah. It's I cannot. I turned 60 in January. I can still remember the various conversations and how they played out. Sitting on the porch with my great auntie, walking to tea with her
To tea. Okay, yeah.
with these little patent leather shoes and lace
Absolutely.
socks and my gloves and my hat. You couldn't tell me anything. But she would check you. How are you walking? How are you sitting? Who is talking to you?
Yeah.
How did you respond? There's no such thing as yeah to an adult. You're not that transparent with adults. You ask what's asked, you answer, and you answer with respect.
Yeah.
Don't care what it is. And she would walk in front of me just slightly, but look back. We sit on the porch afterwards, drinking tea.
Yeah.
I'm in the swing.
Right.
These old people in their swings.
There's some
And
swings.
she's in
There's a
that
lot of-
rocking chair.
yeah.
But I would swing as high as I could go, and we would talk. And she didn't talk to me like a kid. She sewed into me. She talked to me about church. She talked to me about responsibility. This lady was older. I think my auntie Noya had to be in her about 75, 76. But on Saturday morning, she got up and she cut that grass. That house was spotless.
Absolutely.
She cooked for herself. That porch was swept, that sidewalk was swept, and I had a neighbor to tell me, I think you're the only person that comes out here and sweeps the sidewalk in my community.
Right, you still do that.
I still do
You
that.
still do that.
I still do that. I take care of my home. I live in a townhome now, but I made sure that my yard is nice. I planted flowers. Of course, they put flowers out there. I dug
Right.
that junk up. I'm like, who wants those boxwood? So I put different plants out there. And,
Right.
and of course, when my neighbors are my neighbors, I don't want my home to be an eyesore to them. So
Right.
I make sure that everything is in order.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's. I'm always. There's always a question I like to ask individuals, especially those with advanced degrees, because I think it's important, especially when I talk with young people at schools and just so into young people, to remind them that, the end, what you see at the end of an individual isn't always how they were. And so my question is a little more pointed in terms of, generally, what type of student were you?
So I was a student that could hear
Okay.
what was being taught. As long as I could apply it in my mind,
Okay.
then I grasped the subject. History, don't talk to me about history. That made no sense to me. I could not put the pieces together.
Yeah.
But anything that was analytical, logical, I could put it together and make it make sense. Math, when I understood how the beginning got me to the end, it was good. So I could take the advanced math courses. History was not my thing. I struggled in history because there was no interest. Now I'm like, I could beat myself up because, hey, I need to know history. So I'm
Right.
going back getting civic books and things,
Right.
trying to understand the history. So I think I was a good student because failure was not an option and it had to be done. So I prioritized, I made it happen. You know, I was a cheerleader for the first 3 years of high school.
Okay.
Did the band as a majorette for 1 year. Just wanted to branch off and do something different. Didn't like it at all, that rifle girl thing.
Right. And it's the difference between being a cheerleader and a majorette.
Yeah,
Right.
it was that rifle girl.
Majorette is a full-time job. Like that's a different situation in the
Yeah,
South.
it was. But I did those things. I played tennis, the first person of color to play in tennis in my high school.
Oh, okay.
And in college, when I went the first year, the local 4-year university, all women's school, I played tennis there. My uncle taught me tennis
Really?
in the park. Yeah, he did, because it was something that he didn't think we did.
Yeah.
So he wanted me to do it.
Wanted you to do it.
Yeah. And so I was a good student, not because I wanted to be a good student. I was a good student because failure was not an
Not
option.
an option. Right.
Yeah. And learning comes natural for me. If I hear it, I can pass that test.
That's that.
Yeah.
That's it. You retain.
I
So
retain
you're an auditory learner.
I am.
Nice.
I am.
And I'm a visual. Like I'm a combination of both.
I think so too.
I'm a combination of both. Like I learn more through. I learn a lot through. Like I'm going through some training right now at work, and I have in person and virtual. And virtual is tough for me,
Yeah.
especially if the person isn't on the screen.
Yeah.
But in person, because I can see it, I can hear
Be a
it,
part of it.
and be a part of it. I pick it all up. So
Yeah.
I completely understand that. All right, so we get through high school. You're good at being a student because that's the only thing you know. And at this point, you're functioning on autopilot. I heard you mention that after high school, you went to the local college.
Yeah, 4-year.
What was that? What was that decision like? What was that school? Let's start with
I
that.
didn't want to go to college.
You did not
I
want-
had no desire. I wanted to go to the Air Force. I passed the ASVAB, did really great. My mother said, absolutely not. She vetoed that thing.
The
You're not going.
individual with a doctorate did not want to go to college.
I was over it.
Vehemently against it, headed to the military.
Totally against it. I was going to the Air Force. I took the test behind my mother's back. I passed it. I'm thinking I'm old enough. I can go whether she wants me to or not. But my mother meant so much to me. I wasn't going. So I went to Mississippi State initially.
Okay.
It was different. Made my first B, and I was mortified. I really
So
thought
you were an all A student all the way through because you were good at school and failure is not an option. Got your first B in.
almost lost my marbles. I told that instructor, "What do I do with this?" And he said, "Well, I don't understand. It's a high B." I said, "Yeah, but it's not an A."
Right.
And he says, "You have to remember, now you are amongst your peers."
Yeah.
He said, "You weren't amongst your peers in high school." He said, "These kids came with just as high of a grade point average as you." And I said, "So you can't expect to do what you did in high school." And I'm thinking to myself, So now I'm sitting out in the hallway in my dorm at night, studying all night, making sure I go back through everything. My roommate would stick her head out the door. "You can come in." I said, "No, I don't want to keep you awake."
Yeah.
That wasn't going to happen again. But it did.
But
And I'm
it did.
thinking college is not for me.
Yeah.
Wasn't for me.
Wasn't for you. So you left Mississippi State,
I did.
and where did you? What was that conversation like with your mom?
I didn't have it.
Right.
I just made the
You
decision.
just made the decision.
Joined the Air Force, the Army. Joined the Army.
Hold on a second. So mom says no military. You say I'm not going to college, but I'm gonna go to college because my mom means that much to me. I get to college, I get my first B, I give it all I got, I still have that B, and I say I'm out. college isn't for me
It's
because
not
I
for
got
me.
a B.
It
That
wasn't for
is
me.
incredible.
It wasn't for me. And then I had Keeley. I will never forget his name, econ instructor.
Okay.
Keeley told me that you are a female. Don't expect to get anything higher than a B if you get that.
Oh.
He told everybody in the classroom that.
He said
So-
to the females in the.
Yeah,
Now
he
keep
did.
in mind, my new job, my new career is EEO, and I just literally
He
took
did.
training on barrier analysis the other day, and this is the exact thing that you would. Wow.
Yeah. He told me. He told us that.
He told all the women
He
in the
did.
class that
Don't expect to get, if you get a B, don't expect anything higher. He was tenured, and so when I
that
talked
is
about
incredible to say that
He
to
said
a
that.
human being.
and he was tenured, and they said, well, probably nothing's going to be done to him.
Wow.
And I said, wow. So that means
Wow.
my efforts mean nothing.
Yeah.
And how many other classes is that true for? So I wasn't going to beat my head up against a big wall. I'm out of here. I'm done.
outta here, right. I'm outta here.
So join the army.
Join the army. How did you sell that first? How did you sell that to mom?
She didn't like it. Had some choice words for me.
Absolutely.
But at the end, that's what I did.
Yeah.
And man, I thought I knew me,
Yeah.
but going to basic training in AIT, basic training, learning what I was capable of physically. No big deal, right? But what you're capable of mentally.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm like, you walking doing fire guard at night, and you have that moment where you get to be proud of yourself. I'm like, I finished that rug march.
Yeah.
I finished that. I showed up for PT. I knocked out those push-ups.
So not to date it entirely, but what year are we talking about you going into basic
In
training?
1984.
84. Now 84 is still you've got and I came into the Air Force in 94, and there were still a few of those like the old guys were angry on their way out. In 84, you still had the Vietnam era basic training individuals and mindset, right? Those who had just come home, for some years, but they were still in the military. That was a different era of basic training in terms of how hard it could have been.
Yeah.
What was basic training like for a young lady from Mississippi who had no real intention on?
So I cannot tell you some of the things I said because I've told God that I'm not saying those things anymore.
Right.
But, so I knew that this one particular drill sergeant, he was a tough guy.
Yeah.
He wanted to make it difficult for us. And so in him trying to make it difficult for us, I'm like, failure's not an option. You won't defeat me.
Yeah.
So I'm playing just as many mind games with him as he was trying to play with us. Right?
Yeah.
We go on a march, right? And he'd be behind us, and he's calling cadence. So him behind us, we call cadence.
Right.
He walk in front. We stop singing cadence. I tell everybody, na 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 na. You don't sing anymore.
Right.
And so he hear that, and he back up, trying to see where it's coming from, and we go back to singing. And then at the end, he said, "I know you were responsible for that." He said, "I'm going to take you to the sand pit."
Yeah.
And so it was just funny. So at the end of basic, you're all dressed up. You get to do your hair finally.
Yeah.
We were nappy the whole
Absolutely.
time.
Right,
And we
right.
get to do our hair and got little earrings in. And he looks at me and he says, "That's you." I said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "Hey," he said, "did you ever dream about me?" And I said, No, I didn't.
Right.
But I know you dreamed about me.
Right, absolutely.
I was probably his worst nightmare.
Absolutely, yeah.
I remember this one day, it was PT, and we were going to run. I was tired.
Yeah.
I decided I wasn't going to run, but in my little dumb mind, it's dark. There's so many of us, they're not going to know who I am sitting on the curb and waiting for them to come back, and I'm going to jump back in formation. I did this dumb thing. So I'm sitting there, and the drill sergeant said, "Get in formation." And I'm like, "Not today, drill sergeant," because I don't think he can see me. It's dark.
Right.
And so they come back, I jump in, I go back to the barracks, I take a shower, go down for chow, and all of the drill sergeants are standing in the huddle, including the captain. And they called me over.
I'm waiting on you.
And they said, "So you're the bad so-and-so that told the drill sergeant you weren't going to run this morning." I said, "It wasn't me, drill sergeant. He must be mistaken." "Oh, now you're saying he's lying." "I'm just saying he might be mistaken. I'm, locked up and everything." And they said, "Okay, we got something for you." So I had to write an essay about lying.
About
It was like a 4-page essay.
4 pages.
That's okay, I got it. I sit down. It's not good to lie, it's not good to lie, it's not good to lie. All on the front page. On the back side, I will not lie, I will not lie. On the back side. 3rd page, I shall not lie, I shall not lie, I shall not lie. and that's how it went.
That's how it
turned it in. They're like, and she's college educated.
Yeah. This one right here is going to be a problem, ladies and gentlemen. We know that.
Yeah. So, but wow, wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. What I learned about me, the strength. I could say integrity, but after that story, I won't bring integrity into conversation. But learning what I was capable of.
Yeah.
And doing that thing. I was good.
You were good.
And I still carry those values.
And you were proud of yourself.
I was proud of myself because I wasn't a weakling.
Right.
I wasn't a wimp.
Did you feel like that was a time you had obviously had the mental fortitude? Was that one of the first real tests of your physical fortitude, or the combination of both?
I think it was more a realization of how mentally tough I was.
You were, right.
Because of growing up and the things that I had to do as a kid. Remember, my mother was young. So my mother and I were growing up together, and I come home from school, I paid bills at 5 years old. Wow. I cleaned a house at 5 years old.
Yeah.
I had all that done before my mother got home at 4, including homework. So realizing how my childhood, even today, when I think about things, when I'm in tough situations, I might cry for a minute because I'm learning to extend grace to me. But I thank my mom for making me the woman that I am, because there's never a time that something is out of my reach.
Right.
Problem solving, I got that.
Yeah.
Give me a problem, I'll have you a solution before the end of the hour.
Absolutely.
Now, is it going to come to fruition? I don't know. You got to test the
gotta
theory.
way forward.
But I know I don't waddle. Okay, this is happening. I got a problem. How am I going to fix it? I'm not calling people, "Oh, woe is me." I'm working this thing out. And that's what my mother taught me. So going to the military, I learned how to adapt and overcome. I wasn't push-ups, sit-ups. No, that wasn't my thing. I didn't know. I played tennis, but you could forget all that other nonsense.
Yeah.
But when they put me on my face and I had to knock out push-ups, I said, they won't defeat me. I'm going to knock these.
Failure is not an option.
Failure is not an option.
The common thread.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to knock those push-ups out.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Nope.
Wow.
How many did I do? Did I do more than the person next to me?
Yeah.
If I didn't, I'm going to start over.
Then we're going to start over.
Yeah.
Wow. So you get through basic. Does your mom come to your basic training
She
graduation
wasn't having
AIT?
that.
All right,
Yeah, she wasn't
understand.
doing that.
I understand. Mom's held her ground on that. Beautiful. So, what's your job when you go to AIT? What's your
76.
MOS?
I was 76 Victor Supply.
Supply.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was supply.
Interesting.
Later transferred over to water purification. And
What does that do? Water purification is just that. But does that mean you deploy a lot?
you deploy a lot.
Right, because
you
you are
deploy
responsible for
the
that
water source for
down.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And man, just understanding. Okay, understand. I didn't know what it meant when I signed up for
Right.
it. I'm thinking,
Right.
oh, this is a wimp job here.
Yeah.
This is nothing. No.
No.
You're the best way to take out an entire platoon is to poison the water.
Absolutely.
So I got to make sure you have good water.
Which goes into a lot more than people think, right? Now there's
Absolutely.
math involved, there's pH balances,
Yeah,
there's all types of
absolutely.
things that
Absolutely.
you have to protect that water source for individuals.
Yes.
Because it's a key component to
It's a
anything
key component.
downrange or any. I mean, you're in the Army at the end
Yeah.
of the day, right?
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay, so you started out as supply. Where was your first base?
Fort Jackson, I did basic there, and then Fort Lee, AIT, and then stayed at Fort Lee,
Okay, so Fort Jackson is
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Fort Lee is here in Virginia, here, but literally
yep,
right
yep.
across the bridge from us. And then when you left AIT, you stayed here at Fort Lee.
Fort Lee. I got married.
Okay.
My husband was military.
Okay.
I did 10 years reserve because he
Okay.
was a permanent party recruiter.
Oh,
And we both
okay.
could,
Both
highly
can stay
deplorable.
active duty. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that changed that.
So how long were you on active duty? Was that the first
4 years.
4 years? Okay. And so the first 4 years you were here at Fort Lee, you got married and then switched over to the reserve side of the house, which I completely understand. I retired as an active reservist from active duty. So I get that concept. Okay, and your husband was a
Permanent party
permanent
recruiter.
party recruiter. Now, where was he based?
So he went back to Mississippi,
Okay.
and then we went to Tennessee. So he was a
Tennessee.
permanent party recruiter in Tennessee.
Okay.
That was, and seeing that guy,
Yeah.
the love for his service,
Yeah.
and the pride he had in his uniform and the work he did, our kids didn't have a choice.
They didn't have a chance. And I was waiting to get to that because if you have the mom who in no way, shape, or form accepts defeat, you have the mother who believes failure is not an option, and then their father is a recruiter for the Army who, what people don't realize is the picture of you are the walking billboard for the Army to the youngest people on the planet. So you have to both physically convince them everything about you confidence-wise has to accept no failure in any way, shape, or form. Your children, they didn't stand a shot, man.
But going back to the recruiting,
Yeah,
it wasn't a job for him.
it wasn't.
He owned those kids.
Yeah.
If it was a kid that had to be on the, Fat Boy program,
Yeah,
he was vested. That kid we're eating together. We're running together. We're talking. What are your fears? What are your worries? What are your concerns? He was vested. If you weren't a good candidate, I don't care what mission looked like. I don't care if he had nobody to go. He wasn't sending you.
your career wasn't attached to me. I
No.
put in the best.
I put in the best, but I put in those that I think will not fail
Yeah.
at it. It's not for everybody. I hate this thought. If you can't go to college, if you can't get a job, go to the military. No, that's not true.
That's not
That
true.
we're not. It's not that mindset.
Yeah.
And so with him, he owned that. He says, no, if you are not qualified mentally and you're not vested, don't do that to yourself. you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint at heart. I don't care what anybody says. It's not for the weak. But basic is not for the weak.
Yeah.
You know, AIT is not for the weak. And he would recognize that in kids, and he would give them alternatives. He said, come back and see me after you've thought about it some more. He's not going to send you just to make mission.
Yeah.
He wanted to make sure you were going to be good. But, you know, the same passion he had for recruiting and being an Army man, because he wore that proudly,
Yeah.
he had it for our home.
Yeah.
You know, recruiters are gone all day,
A
all
lot.
night
It's
on the
a-
road.
it's a-
But
yeah.
he would get up, cut that grass before he left, wash those cars, clean the garage. He did his part. He didn't get to see the boys often,
Yeah.
but he did his part. You know, he made sure things were taken care of. Dress right, dress at home. Dress right, dress when you get to the office.
Yeah.
You know, and we were a good team,
Yeah.
you know, in that regard, you know.
So I'm glad you brought your sons. So I'll assume that your sons were born and raised in Tennessee.
One was born in Mississippi
Okay.
and raised in Tennessee.
Okay.
So they were both raised
Raised
in Tennessee
in
because we
Tennessee.
spent our last years there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a boy mom.
You are a boy.
And I
mom.
didn't raise boys, I raised men
I-
because I was the one present all the time. And so you got this little 1-year-old
Yeah.
with a little swisher thing cleaning out the toilet,
Yeah.
washing cleaning his tub, making his bed. I'm not raising boys, I'm raising men.
Yeah.
When we went out to do the grass together, the yard, that 4-year-old pulled the weeds. The 2-year-old put him in the 1-year-old put him in the wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
So they learned nothing's given to you.
Yeah.
They had to work at it. They cleaned their rooms. They didn't clean them perfectly. When they turned their backs, I straightened it up.
Right.
But they thought they made that bed.
But the responsibility was on them at age appropriate stages. Now, what you expected of the 5-year-old, while it was perfection, it was still under the lens of you. It's the 5-year-old, but you know your bed should be much better made at 15. Let's be realistic.
You clean that room, and I wasn't. My thought process was, the world. You know, I said if something happened to me or your dad, and you know, people love to say, "Oh, you got great kids. I'll take care of them." People don't want to take care of a burden.
Yeah.
You need to be self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
And I was teaching them to be self-sufficient, you know, and it's so funny because as teenagers, they get up, clean those rooms, take the laundry to the washroom, head out to the yard before anybody else got out there,
Yeah.
thinking they were going to get it over with.
Yeah.
And even as adults now, that's their mindset. Take care of the yard, take care of the home, do what you got to do. And never been to jail. Went to the school once because this one changed his C to a B.
Oh, I
But
like
when I
it.
went to the school, the educator said, please don't do anything to him. He's 17 and he says, yes, sir. He's so respectful.
Right.
You know, people in the community would always say, you got the best boys, you know.
Raising boys. I have 2 girls. You know, one of my best friends is helping today with production, and he had boys, and so we always talked about because our kids are literally around the same ages, so we raised them together. We always talked about the difference between boys and girls, right? And so and doing a lot of community work. I coach basketball, and my sweet spot where I love to coach are 8th grade boys. I kind of catch them just before they get into high school and they're little. I realize that it is a significant difference
It is.
in raising young black boys to become men.
Yes.
And it's a heck of a responsibility, and it's also a heck of a responsibility as a woman to make sure that some of those things that are instilled in a boy, you know, to become a good solid, upstanding citizen man is something you really got to work at.
You know what? And I am going to beg the differ. I tell God all the time, I said, you sure did, and I say favor. I continue to say that I have favor. My sons were probably the easiest kids to raise. My youngest got baptized at 4.
Okay.
His choice.
His choice
He
at
came
4.
home and he said, Mommy, Daddy, I have to be at church at 7 o'clock next Sunday because I'm going to be baptized. And his dad is looking at me and I'm looking at him. His dad says, what does that mean? And we called him Bug. He said, what does that mean, Bug? He said, that just means I get to go live with Jesus when I die. And I said, okay. I said, so what do you have to do? You just have to know that Jesus is God's son. He only had one, and that's easy. And I've got this beautiful picture of him coming up out of the water with this huge smile on his face. And when he gets dressed, he says, I have to start paying my tithes. My oldest wanted to get baptized at 6, but the pastor wouldn't do it because he didn't think he knew what he was talking about. So he later, went to visit grandparents, and they did allow him, and he told him, I want to be baptized. He got baptized. So not only did I grow up with these 2 kids that I'm teaching how to take care of things, but we talk about the Bible. We're at the table because cell phones existed,
Right.
but you couldn't bring it to my table.
Right, absolutely.
The TV wasn't on when we were at dinner.
Right.
I told them about my challenges with work, so that they would feel free to tell me about their challenges with school.
Right.
There were no barriers. You could say anything you wanted to say as long as you were respectful. So we had those conversations, but we could talk about the Bible too.
Yeah.
I remember I was mad at my husband, and I was sitting on the porch, and my 8-year-old at this time, he comes out. This is my baby. He comes out and he says, Mom, I know you're probably mad at Dad, but the Bible says, pray for those who spitefully use you.
The Bible says from the
I'm like, spiteful, and I'm thinking, is that what it says, or does it say despiteful? And he's saying, and I'm listening, I'm looking at this boy, and I'm like, I don't want to hear that. And he says, the one thing I know, Mom, I'm not going to let anybody decide what type of man I'm going to be. Don't let Dad make you mad. And I'm thinking to myself, if you don't go back inside, but that's the relationship.
It's in his DNA, though.
Yeah.
It's in there. It's, again, when you have these conversations, and when I have these conversations and I'm listening to what you're saying, all with this backdrop of who you were and how you were raised and the people pouring into you, it's in their DNA.
They are good boys. Even now, my oldest, he calls and we're talking. He's going through something, but he trusted me enough
to have
to have conversations and ask for prayer.
Yeah.
And ironically, my youngest is the toughest. That kid, jiu-jitsu, tai chi, raving in the Air Force. But he sent me a message, and he says, Mama, thank you for always praying for me. I think I'm pretty tough.
Yeah.
But man, that one got me. I'm like, where did that come from? How do you know that I'm praying for you?
I will tell you, and I mean, obviously you know, right? Because you grew up with the feeling that someone cared and poured into you.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? Before I say that, I want to make sure I don't skip over something.
Sure.
Because I think it is, it's important to note the thread that weaves through not just you, but that's in the DNA of your sons. I don't think people really understand what a raven is, right? And so, as retired Air Force, I know exactly what a raven is and what it means to be that. And so when you're looking at, and this is for the people watching and listening, a raven is the top of the top.
Yes.
When we're talking about security forces in the Air Force. They have They have a different, there's so much the top of the top that they have a security clearance that doesn't even exist for regular or even people who you think have top security clearances. It's the definition of there's always another level.
Always another level.
The Ravens are another level. They provide presidential security.
Yes.
The things they do in terms of policing, most of them usually, if they choose to, and they're courted by everyone, from Secret Service to, because the security they provide, it literally does not get any better than that in the United States Air Force. And that, again, is that thread that weaves through in terms of not accepting failure, because it is not easy to become a Raven.
Easy.
And there are a lot. Security forces is usually one of the, on every base in the military, especially in the Air Force, you're gonna have a large pool of two career fields for men, or just period. Security forces and CE. And there's always a whole lot of security forces. So I'm saying that to say, to reach that level of a Raven in such a career field that has so many people in it is, my hat's off to that young man.
Straight out of AIT. He got it straight out, and they told him he wouldn't because he's not the tallest dude. He's not the tallest.
Yeah.
But he is mentally tough. This boy, and he doesn't talk about it, right? He's not talking about, people like to taunt and boast about what they do.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear that. He goes home to cook for his family because his wife is working late. I've got dinner tonight. He doesn't, bring that home. I worked hard all day and all that. No, he is a parent. He taught my granddaughter how to shoot. They did their first, not his first, but her first. She's doing Tai Chi Jiu-Jitsu. And she did Jiu-Jitsu, and she had her first tournament. They both came in first place in that tournament together.
Come on, man.
I'm like, wow, I'm so proud. But you can forget it because when they were younger, we all took Taekwondo.
Really? As a family?
Yeah, we did. Their dad was a black belt. My youngest, when he stopped Taekwondo, he was black-white. I was purple. My oldest was blue. And I quit because my youngest would not spar. He didn't want to hit girls when he sparred.
Yeah.
He was very gentle.
Yeah.
But this boy kicked me in the top of my head. And I said, you wouldn't kick the other girls, but you would kick your mom? He said, we were sparring. I said, but I'm a girl too. Right. He says, you're my mom.
You're my mom though.
I was so mad at him, I didn't go back. I was done. I was so done. I couldn't, and I made him walk home. I really did.
That's
I did.
Fantastic.
I was
you
angry.
Made him walk
I can't
home.
believe you would have more respect for these little girls and not want to hurt them, but you kicked your mom. But this kid, every time I'm talking to him, they're putting him into capacities that nobody else is in, and he's the only one doing the job. And they're getting on my nerves, Mom. They're getting on my, but he's doing the work.
And he rises to the challenge.
And I tell him, I said, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
I said, now you love to quote scripture. I said, you better hold on to that one. I said, you want to forget that one often, but he does it. I'm not doing it. I'm going back to my old MO. Just send me back to my old job. As soon as we find someone to take this one, we'll put you back.
Right.
They call him the little short disgruntled guy. And I laugh about that.
Yeah.
I said, you're still the little short disgruntled guy. And they tell the news people coming looking for him. They said, just go find a little short disgruntled guy.
Yeah, that's funny. So, and your other son is in the Army?
Yes, and he's medic.
He's medic, okay.
He's in Florida.
Okay.
And he works in the hospital. Because when they were younger, I'd take them to work with me, in the summer, and they would do little admin things because I was a practice administrator for a women's group in Tennessee. And so they come to work for me. The oldest, he have no problem out of that one.
Yeah.
The youngest, they gave him his first little paycheck under the table. And He says, I did all of that work for $20. That's child abuse. Yeah, I'm not working for $20.
That's right. Put it on. Listen, man, I'm here.
He was
You can
10.
treat me.
He
That's
said,
right.
I'm not working all day for
$20.
$10.
Do not treat me like
don't
that.
do it. He wasn't having it.
Yeah.
And we laugh about that all the time. I talk to the lady that worked for me, and she says, I remember you bringing that little boy up there talking about he wasn't working for $20.
That's right.
You know, it was funny. But he's always been outspoken, always been strong,
Yeah.
mentally tough. I thought my oldest was mentally tough. My oldest is kind-hearted.
Mm-hmm.
He's very kind and giving and loving towards people.
Mm-hmm.
He'll give you the shirt off his back. That youngest, you're going to have to wrestle for that.
It's two different breeds
You
of
know,
people, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you, when you watch this, I hope you see what everyone else sees about, and I hope your sons see it. You came as bright, you became as bright as that dress, in beaming about your young man, and I think that is really dope, because again, I'm watching, I'm seeing, and I'm listening to the thread weave through all of them, and it's also really interesting, again, seeing what they are today. It doesn't fall short of me that one's in the Army, one's in the Air Force. It doesn't fall short of me that one's in the medical field, the medical admin field, and we'll talk more about that in a second. And that the other one is, top of the top in the Air Force.
Yeah.
And how they really aren't that far off from what you wanted from yourself and what you have done in your career, right? So let's talk a little bit more about, I want to focus right now on education.
Yeah.
Because you pride yourself on one thing, and that is mental toughness. I noticed as I'm doing my research and I'm looking at you, and I look at your educational journey, it's really interesting. There's this path that takes a really interesting time stamp. So between your degrees, there's a 12-year, 13-year period between both of them. And the reason why that stuck out to me is it's not the traditional, I went to college here, I got my master's right after that, I pushed through and went and got my doctorate after that. There was life lived. Mm-hmm. And then there was something that said, I want this. Mm-hmm. Then there was life lived. Mm-hmm. And there was something that said, I want or I need this. Mm-hmm. Let's go from bachelor's happened in 1996. Mm-hmm. What year were your sons born?
1984.
Okay.
And 1990. They're 6 years apart.
And it was important for me to ask the question because when I'm looking here at timestamps, mm-hmm. right? What I find fascinating is getting a degree mm-hmm. in 96 mm-hmm. with two sons who you were just beaming over, mm-hmm. And your approach to parenting, mm-hmm. what you were raising, what that took to raise them. Mm-hmm. In 96, there was no online classes.
Exactly.
So what led to that decision to say, I'm gonna because I don't know if there were any other classes between now and then, but the last time we heard, this gentleman in Mississippi State said, you will never get more than a B. That doesn't exist. Even if you give it all you got, you're not getting a B, you're not getting higher than B, and you're off to the military.
Mm-hmm.
what leads back to 96?
So everything in my life I've learned by watching folk.
Okay.
The older people in my community, how they took care of the little that they had. My mom working hard. My mother didn't know how to bake when I was a kid. So everything that I did, I wanted to be the best experience for my children, the best example. Children don't hear what you say, they see what you do. So you're right. Those classes were taken at night. I would get up in the morning. Of course, I made breakfast for them, go to work, go straight to class. But the night I would come in, I would make dinner for the next day. So my husband was a good partner in this because he would come home so that he could make sure they ate and everything. But I would come in from class. My last class probably was over around 10 o'clock. Come in, make dinner for the next day, made sure I made breakfast, got that bachelor's so they could see me walk. The one thing I told the, go ahead.
Why the bachelor's? What was, if you can remember, what was, there's this, there's a radio show that I absolutely love, and the host is called, her name is Karen Hunter, and she asks this question in a way that I absolutely love every time. And so I'm going to borrow from Karen Hunter and say, what was the Damascus moment that said, I'm going to get a bachelor's degree, and then you went and signed up?
Being an example to my children, not telling them what to do, but showing them. And so it started with the bachelor's. You had to go, that was the catalyst. Because when I'm talking to them every day, I'm showing them how to do life well. Our home was clean.
Yeah.
I cleaned. I don't care that I worked, my husband worked. I cooked. I put my husband's plate in front of him. People called me Susie Homemaker, but that's important to me. I made sure his food was hot. I put it before him. I took it off the table when he was done. I showed them, because God says a man who finds a wife finds a good thing. I'm a wife. I know that.
Yeah.
And so I did those things. Doing the laundry, I dressed like a mother that they would be proud of when we went out into the public. You didn't see me, I don't care if I was going to Lowe's. I don't care if I was going to, Walmart. I looked like somebody they wouldn't be ashamed of.
Right.
My hair wasn't in curlers. My hair wasn't ratty.
Yeah.
I put the makeup on, the clothes on. We went to the Walmart. So I got the degree.
So you said, I'm going.
Because I didn't
Go ahead.
tell them, I'm showing them. One thing I told my children, I don't care what you do in life, you do it to the best of your ability and you be at the top of your game. If you decide you don't want to go to college, I'm good. You're not going to live here for free. You're not going to sleep here for free. You
Right.
better be doing something.
Right.
And so whatever you decide to do, be at the top. You're going to work on the garbage truck? Get the top certification being a trash collector. There's something associated. Whatever you do, I won't tell it to you. I didn't want to tell them to go to the military and something happened to them. I would never forgive myself.
Right.
I didn't want to tell them to go to college, something happened to them. I wouldn't forgive myself.
Yeah.
I didn't tell them what to do, but I told them you've got to do something. And whatever you do, be at the top of your game. So I started with the bachelor's. That wasn't the end result. I knew that I was going to get the master's. Never heard of a doctorate of business administration. Didn't know what a DBA was. Went to a conference in Nevada, Las Vegas. And I'm sitting at the table, and like for so many of us, I'm the only one that looked like me at this table. And when I'm looking around this table, I see no degrees. I see MBA. And out of all of these folk at this table, I saw a DBA, and I can remember where I was sitting, to my right, white male, glasses, and it said DBA. And I said, what's a DBA?
What's a DBA?
That's different. And so from that point on, I
it's a
started
raven.
saying, I'm working on my DBA. I spoke that thing into existence. I saw that in 1996 at a conference.
And in 1996, you had just had your bachelor's.
I sure did, but I went from the bachelor's to the DBA. I was going to have that thing because it was unique. Nobody at that table had it. When I researched what it was, I said, absolutely, I'm doing that. And so I've got that bachelor's, went straight into that master's program. I finished that program. It was the best educational experience ever. I learned so much about leadership and who I was, what I'm wired to do. Now I have a name for the gifts and talents that God has given me. I am a problem solver. I can put things together, operationalize them, and they work because I don't do it haphazardly. I don't do it remote, just off of rote memorization. I think and plan it out. And now, not that I needed it, because I know that I can do the work. I got the DBA because most of us can't just walk in on our raw talents and gifts. We've got to have something behind our name. And when I got the master's, that guy told me, and I was arguing a point, it was logic.
Okay.
Good course for me,
Right.
because I'm giving you a run for your money.
That's right.
And so we would debate and banter, and I would stay after class. Can we talk about this some more? He says, "You're not going to drive me crazy.
You're not going to. You are going to go home.
You're going to go home."
I got
but
something
it was
to do.
the best class ever.
Yeah.
And so, when I got that master's, I was ready for that doctorate. I'm prepared. I'm groomed. I'm ready, and man, was it an eye-opening experience. And even with the doctorate, I did a mixed method study. Most people do qualitative, quantitative, or
Right.
something. I did qualitative and quantitative, 2 studies in 1. So I told my sons, yeah, you got to top that one, buddy.
There it is. There it is.
So so it was never, people like to think that it's about career. Had nothing to do with the career. It had to do with me being and doing what I told my sons to do. Whatever you do in life, you be at the top of your game. I don't care what it is.
Yeah.
I won't tell you what you.
I will tell you as a child of a parent like you. My mom got her bachelor's degree. And I've asked her, my parents are from Trinidad, and my mom will always tell me, and has always told me, even when she got it, my sister and I were around the same age as you and your sons were. When my mom, actually we were a little younger. My mom said she got her bachelor's degree because my sister and I were getting older. We were going through, just getting towards middle school. And she understood that college had to be an option, and because she was from an island, she wanted to make sure that neither one of us could ever say that it couldn't be done.
Couldn't be done.
And so she got her bachelor's and then subsequently got her master's because of that exact same theory that you have, which
Absolutely.
is I'm going to show you that it can be done, because you can't tell me it can't. And I'm going to show you as a parent doing it. And the same thing, my mom strived to be the top of her class, which she was. Same thing with her master's. And so I understand that. And so I come back to you. That was speaking for your sons in that manner. That we see it, right? We know what it is. We understand why you did it, because you mothers have told us, and so we've lived our lives knowing that is the benchmark. And so I wanted to make sure that you knew, and I'm sure your sons have probably said it, but as another kid who was in the place that your sons are, just to reinforce that we saw it, we understood it, we know why you did it, and we've grown to appreciate it, because it's definitely the way that we raise our children. That's the way I raise my daughters. My wife is the example. Everything, a lot of the things you said reminded me of my wife in terms of living, presenting herself in a place that her favorite saying is that, did anyone see Michelle Obama? And that is the in a joking way saying, like, be the person that your daughters want to emulate and can be proud of.
Absolutely.
So again, back to the three. It's really, really interesting to know that you sat at this table. What you saw around the table, the DBA is what jumped out at you,
Yeah.
and you said, "There's another level. I've got to have that."
Yeah.
I'm not sad. I was good at my MBA, or at the time you didn't have either. You just had a bachelor's.
I did not. I kept speaking that.
So the MBA wasn't even in there. What was the reason for the MBA?
To get to the DBA.
To get to the DBA.
Yep.
Now it's important for me to note that you got your bachelor's in 1996. You got your DBA 20 years later in 2015.
That was a beast.
Like,
The research was.
and I'm leaving that little space there.
Yeah.
I'm leaving that little space after I said it there, because hearing a person say today, this is 1996, that I am going to get with, I need not going to get, because I don't want it to even remotely sound envious. He has something. There's something there. It's not even a matter about what he has. There's something else that I didn't know existed. And I want that. 20 years later. But it took you 12 years after getting the bachelor's to even decide or finish the master's. But the goal was the DBA, which came 13 years after that.
So
You talk about mental fortitude.
you said something, and you spoke something. You can't take it back.
Can't take it back.
I meant that. I meant what I said. The journey to the doctorate, anybody on a doctoral journey will tell you, there are so many facets to that. The writing, the research, then actually, and I did a dual method study. I didn't do a singular study. I didn't do qualitative. I didn't do quantitative. I did both. And so that's two studies that I have 489 surveys at the end of weeding out. It was initially it was like 600 and some odd surveys that I had to manually go through.
Yeah.
Put that data in a database, risk stratify it, identify common themes, because that's how you analyze qualitative data. The quantitative piece was no big deal. I got that done, no big deal at all. Linear regression, those things I didn't really understand when I had to do linear regression. So here's the time when I was saying to myself, well, I might just have to fail at this.
This is going to be the one.
I may be all but dissertation.
Right.
But that thing popped up in my head. Failure is not an option.
Yeah.
Failure is not an option. You are not going to let this one thing defeat you. So I'm praying about it. I'm like, okay, God, well, I don't understand linear regression. I can't get it. YouTube. Did a YouTube video. Before the video was over, I got it. I put that data in there and tested for my, and it was done. Yeah. But I never forgot what I told my kids.
Yeah. You told your kids you were going to get a DBA.
I told my kids, whatever you do, you be at the top of your game.
Okay.
You be at the top of it. And a bachelor's in business, master's in business, that's not the top. Yeah. There's another thing I can do.
There's something else.
And that was the doctorate. And when in 2006, applied, got accepted, I started the journey. It's not about...
Hold on. 2006 is when you applied for the doctoral program. You got your doctorate in 2015. You completed, I won't say got, you completed the doctoral program in 2015. And the reason why I keep stopping is because I want to make sure that I highlight the timeline, because these timelines, again, it's that golden thread that weaves through. It's the mental toughness that you talked about way back when you were in basic training. It is everything that was poured into you. It was failure is not an option. And all of those things continue to manifest themselves and show themselves to be self-evident in the timelines of your journey. That's 9 years.
Yeah. So I started a job in DC at the National Academies of Science, which I thought was my dream job. In 1994, I said I was going to work at the National Academies of Science, the Institute of Medicine. And I thought that was my dream job. And so 2006, I applied and I got that job. So I started working there and I did great work. Never had any overruns, underruns in the grants. I was on the health care side. Got to see a lot of publications through, work with some great people. You couldn't really focus on school and doing that job at the same time, and that was 2006. And living in White Plains, Maryland.
Okay.
Driving to DC every day. I would not have been successful. So I didn't really get involved in the studies until 2009.
Okay.
And so then I had gotten accepted, delayed it, started the work in 2009, started the program, and finished 2015.
Hold on, let me jump in, because you just gave me another timeline that I don't want to skip over, because I think it is really, really interesting. So you applied in 2006, you got in to the doctoral program. I do not want to skip over that, right? Because that is not, there are a lot of people who take the shot, and a lot of people don't get accepted, right? And so I want to celebrate that moment in this journey, right?
Yeah.
And not skip over that. But even more so, you deferred that.
Yes.
You deferred that for 3 years.
Yeah. I had to find my rhythm here. I just moved here, had to find my rhythm, make sure that I had the time to really devote to it, because it's not, I know so many people go through school and it's a means to an end.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity for me. The stuff that I learned, it was great. And I didn't want to breeze through that. I didn't want to do something just to say I did it. It was meaningful to me. My doctoral journey, wow, I learned so much that aligned with who I am as an individual, about leadership, integrity, consistency, content. Learning all of that stuff through my studies. And I'm excited because, that's me. That's me. I'm a leader. And I know that. I know that from childhood. I didn't need anybody to say, hey, come along with me. I didn't need that. I never need that. If I want to do something, I understand how to do it. I am resourceful enough to get the information, and I go for it. I am good at walking alone. I know that's not the way. I know that we have to partner and collaborate. I get it. But if there's nobody willing to say, yes, I'm going with you, hey, I'm doing it.
But that's the strength of an only child who was raised in a community that poured into her and told her that she could still keep moving forward.
I have a sister. We're 10 years apart.
You are 10 years apart.
Yeah.
Huh.
Night and day.
Night and day.
That's a tough character right there.
Look at that.
So you said
and
only
I meant
child.
To ask
so
you earlier. I meant to ask earlier, were there any siblings?
Yes, I have a sister.
You have a sister. Okay.
And
We'll continue on though.
Yeah.
So you said, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
You take these 3 years between 2006, when you were accepted into the doctoral program, in 2000, you wanted to give yourself the battle rhythm, and clearly it was not far from your brain that I'm in this doctoral program and I'm going to get to it. I just need to figure out my battle rhythm.
Yeah.
At that point, 2009 happens and you say, now's the time.
Yeah.
Now, the 6-year journey to the completion of the doctoral program begins.
So the academic work was done. It was the research piece.
The research part.
Taking the time, again, it was 2 studies in one. Being able to go out, gather the surveys, because there's a lot of integrity that goes with survey and data collection. Making sure that I could consistently collect the data, get the data, then start to analyze it, put it into a format. And that took time. That took a lot of time. And God is so, he's so strategic. I lost a job the first time in my life. I lost a job in 2010. So that's when I had the opportunity to finish the research and everything and get through it. But, you know, he's strategic, and it was perfect. So I could spend the days going to capture the surveys. And I gave myself 10 days to get them all because of the number of surveys I need to collect in order for the study to be considered, you know, a good study. Got 680 something surveys, had to throw out about 120, 160 or more of them, ended up with 489. So I still had enough to be significant, you know, for it to be a significant study. Then putting the data together, going through trying to read the handwriting because they were paper surveys. So yeah, it took a minute. And then I got hung up on how to analyze the qualitative data. It wasn't numbers. These are things that you identify. Then how do you put them in some type of number or whatever that I'm going to be able to put it into this, write it up. That was, I don't know why that stumped me, but it did. But once I saw YouTube and the guy showed me how to do linear regression, it was on, and I got it done. The night they called me, and after they, you know, I sat for my dissertation to defend, nobody understood a mixed method. They didn't understand FQHC, so there was a lot of conversation. And at the end, why would you have made it hard on yourself and done a mixed method study?
So that was the question
at the end
that the individual, your panel had to ask, that your panel asked you. Why did you make even the hardest thing to do exponentially harder?
And they asked me, they tried to dissuade me when I told them I was doing mixed method.
Right.
And my answer, I didn't want it to be inconclusive. If the qualitative piece supported the quantitative piece, there was not an opportunity, you know, it could be, but it was strengthened. And it was going to be, to me, final. Right?
Yeah.
You can't say, well, what about, or what if?
So what was your topic?
I did the impact of the federal regulations on the mission of the FQHC, which is Federally Qualified Healthcare Centers.
That is, you know what? So that's a perfect segue to the parallel I wanted to talk about, and that is your career path while on this educational journey. And the reason why I pointed out early on about asking what job you had when you were in the Army is because I noticed that there was a stark difference as to what you joined the military for, what your job was in the military. I didn't know about the water treatment, which is even further off the path that we're talking about, to your career path later on. So at what point did you did you get into medical operations? And where was that leap?
Okay. So when I was in 4th grade, I decided that I would work in healthcare or be a beautician. I said they will always have a job.
Okay, all right.
You've never seen
Now,
an unemployed
healthcare was
beautician.
a nurse?
No, never wanted to be on the
You
clinical
just said
side.
healthcare.
I wanted to be on the clerical side. I was clear.
Okay. In
and
4th grade?
yeah,
How'd you even know there was a clerical side to the medical profession?
You know people in your community, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
But yeah, I saw the work that they were doing, and I liked knowing that there was an operational side
Yeah.
to medicine. You didn't have to be a nurse, and I wouldn't have passed pharmacology. That's why I chose not nursing. But my girlfriend, when I decided I was done with college for a while, she went for nursing, and pharmacology was killing her. I'm like, I'm glad I didn't think about
Absolutely.
that. But so before I went to the military, I worked in a physician's office. He was probably the meanest man ever. He was so rude. And that was a hard job, but I liked
What
with
you
that
were doing.
understanding. But I knew that couldn't work for him forever. So that moved me to the military so that I could, take care of myself. But then I knew that that wasn't supply. That was fun with my fellow soldiers, but it
Right.
wasn't my career.
Right.
I wasn't making any decisions. I wasn't having an impact. I wasn't building or creating things. I wasn't operationalizing anything. So I went back to what my passion was. I spoke everything in my life into existence. So I went back to the healthcare side. I started at a medical practice in Tennessee. And with that medical practice, I did amazing things with them. That's when I started school. From school, I finished my bachelor's, got my master's, got whatever. And so it was going back to what I spoke for myself. I knew I wanted to create. And you can create in the healthcare field. I create now. My job is not a job. Dealing with people is a job because I'm introverted. If you let me work alone, I'm good.
Right.
But what I do now, wow, I thank God every day for my assignment.
Yeah.
And so it was never that I got away from it. When I went back to the reservists, I started back in healthcare, and that's where I built, and that's where my niche is. Going to the National Academies of Science, that was in healthcare, but it was not my niche. That was dealing with numbers and data.
Okay.
I wasn't building or creating anything. Now I managed those grant funds well. I'm proud of myself for that.
Absolutely. Right,
$3.5 billion. I managed those grant funds, no overrun.
You almost did it to me again. You threw out a really, really, really large number.
Yeah.
You were managing $3.5 billion in grant
funds.
funds
Yes.
that you had to write grants for?
I don't write the grants.
Okay.
The grants are written once we get approved for
Then
the
you're
grants. I
responsible.
manage the financial side of it.
Which is a really, really big deal. And again, goes back to something, the little nugget you dropped when you said the individuals back in Mississippi, when you were young, taught you about fiduciary responsibility then, and how that materialized itself to manage this amount of money. And we all know that with grant funding, the letter to the law in management is the key to not only successfully executing it, but getting more of it later on.
Absolutely. And getting that project completed
Absolutely.
on time. Started on time, be at the phases on time, making sure that you expend the funds responsibly.
Yes.
And you're not giving money back, and you're not running out of money.
Right.
And I was always proud of that fact. I am proud of whatever I put my hands to, I'm going to do well with it. I'm going to be excellent at it. That's another lofty goal. And it wears on you because you are constantly thinking, this has got to be great, this has got to be great. And I did great at it. But it still was not my passion. Now I get to build things from the ground up,
Yeah.
or take something and gut it and turn it into something that it should be. I get to put medical services in this county so folk aren't going to Maryland, not going to Baltimore, Annapolis, DC for quality care because they don't feel they can get quality health care here. I get to recruit physicians, bring them in. I get to give jobs to folk and give them an opportunity. And when I give you a job, I don't take my hand off of you. I try to mentor these folk that come in.
Yeah.
I tell them, I don't want you working for me for the rest of your life. I said, learn something from me. Go out and replicate it. Now, if you decide to stay, I'm not telling you got to go,
Right.
but I'm saying I would hope that you would see something that would inspire, encourage, motivate you to go out and do better.
Yeah.
And I get people that tell me things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of that. I'm not proud from an ego perspective. I'm proud because the Bible tells us that we're to train the younger people up in the way that they would go. They may not be my natural kids, but these folk are younger than me. I get to show them, walk the walk that I'm talking. I'm not just talking a good game. They come to me and they'll say, I was in a meeting with some of my managers and a coder, and there was a new manager in place. And she threw out something that wasn't accurate. And I looked up. Her colleague said, oh, no, you take that back right now. I'm going to tell you, if you can't support what you just said, don't say it.
Yeah.
Because that's a place you don't want to go with her.
Right.
You know, and she said, she's looking at her, she's looking at me, and she says, can we talk afterwards? And she told her, yeah, I'll tell you about that.
Yeah.
And because they see that I live what I say,
Yeah.
I tell them consistency, integrity, and content. Know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You will lose credibility so fast if you tell people something and they go back to vet that information and it's not accurate. You don't want that. If you make a mistake, if you misquote, say something that's not accurate, hey, I may have misspoken. This is the actual thing.
Yeah. So let me timestamp something, because I love that you love what you do, right? And the director of operations for one of the county's largest employers is really interesting to hear that you love that portion of it. And so, but there's something that I noticed in this timestamp. So you're finishing your doctorate, and at the same time, Civista is changing over to this
Ops.
to this new medical structure that we have here. And it appears resume-wise that two things are kind of working themselves at the same time. You start this position, what drives you to say, you know what, there's a director of operations position down here close to my house. I've been doing this. I wanted to do this since I was in the 4th grade.
So from the National Academies of Science, I worked at an FQHC for a little bit.
Okay.
And that's when I lost my first job in my life. The COO said to me, he came from the for-profit world into the nonprofit world, and he was trying to apply everything from the for-profit world to this entity.
Right.
This entity is governed by the Section 330 grant for HRSA.
Okay.
You can't do certain things. You can't change that thing into something else.
Right.
And so I would always stand up for it and say, you can't do that. I said, that changes the nature of the federally qualified healthcare center when you try to add this component. So one day he called me in his office and he said, when I speak, everybody acts like I'm a god, but you. I said, when you can walk on water and turn it into wine, let's have a conversation.
Right.
Yeah, I was guided there so fast. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like maybe 2 days later they came and told me that they were eliminating my position.
Yeah.
And big girls don't cry. I'd never lost a job. I'd never been fired for a job from a job, except way back in my career. And I sat in my car and I cried for 10 minutes. And I said, God, I don't want to work for any more bad leadership. Leadership is important to me. I'm telling you,
Absolutely.
that's at the top for me.
Yeah.
Exceptional leadership. So just in 2009, before this happened in June 2010, I had incorporated a consulting business.
We were going to talk about
I
that.
had an LLC.
It's literally right there. Consulting company.
So
Why? Because I realized the
SPMC
time frame.
SPMC Consulting. So I went home. I cried 10 minutes on the way home from DC to home. And I'm like, what do I do now? I went on a 7-day fast, liquids only, hearing from God, but putting things in place. I created my letterhead. I created my logo. I made sure that all of my articles of incorporations were in order. I had this thing, I just hadn't done anything with it, so God knew this was going to happen. So I could immediately start working on my LLC. And I did. I got newspapers, I sent out letters to physicians' practices because what I wanted to do was help private practitioners, community docs, identify their operational inefficiencies and make them more self-sustainable. A lot of private doctors struggle because they don't realize that the money that comes into the practice is not theirs. It belongs to the LLC. And so every bill, every employee has to be paid and you get what's left. As an employee, you don't take out everything, and a lot of them will take out every dollar. They'll take it in the form of bonuses. They give ridiculous pay scales. They are paying more than I would pay in my organization because it's off the pay scale for the experience of the individual. So I started sending out letters, contacting people. I got my first 3 clients. And I worked with those people to identify their operation, and I was successful at it. I did good. With the exception, I had one. He went against everything I didn't believe in. I told him, I said, I will do anything as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral.
Right.
But when you step outside of one of those boundaries, I'm out of here.
You're on your own.
That was my highest paid client.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? Moved on. I didn't fail. Got a job with HRSA. A contract with HRSA. Oh my God. I got to go around the U.S., evaluate FQHCs. I'm a governance and finance expert for HRSA. Evaluate the FQHCs for if I did governance, to make sure that they were following the guidelines. I learned so much. And the financials, I got to evaluate their financials. I have a story that I love to tell about this, but I got to do that. And the CFO for University of Maryland Charles Regional he and I worked together at that FQHC that I got terminated from.
Oh, okay.
He started calling me in April of 2014. And I'm like, why is he calling me? I'm not looking for a job. I'm not calling him back. Kept calling. He kept calling. Started calling my house. I said, okay.
He's calling the house now.
Yeah.
Like,
So I said, okay,
I
let me
need
call
you.
Eric and see what he wants.
Right.
So I called him up. This probably was June. I finally returned his call, and I talked to him, and he said, hey, I got this position that I'm creating. I think you'd be excellent for it. I said, but I'm not looking for a job. And he said, well, come out and interview. If you don't want it, you don't have to take it. So you know how you are when you feel like you got the upper hand. I'm not looking for a job, so I can be honest.
Yeah.
And I went in and interviewed with all of them, CMO, CFO, planning, all of the HR, and I was just transparent and honest. When I walked out after I said my piece, I told Eric, I said, I'm probably not going to get this job.
Yeah.
But I wasn't looking for a job, so it didn't matter. I got out of the parking lot to the stoplight at Garrett Avenue and Charles Street, and they called and wanted to offer me the job.
Mm-hmm.
And God had told me that I was going to work there one day, and I was saying, been there, done that. I worked in the hospital, don't want to ever do that again. And so when they called me and told me they wanted to offer me the job, I really liked the consulting.
Yeah.
I, was gone a lot, but I was making a difference.
Yeah.
So when they said they wanted to offer me the job, I said, can I think about it?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, sure. I said, I have 2 more assignments, and I will let you know. And I was like, God, if this is from you, you've got to be clear. I don't want any rhetoric. I don't even want any of you little fancy quotes. Just tell me yes or no, because I don't want to do anything that you haven't ordained for me.
Yeah.
So the next assignment that I had at an FQHC, I shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
The CEO was embezzling money.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody missed it but me.
Mm-hmm.
And the OIG went in, and that was a story. But they asked, how did you know? What made you know?
Yeah.
And it was my attention to detail. And so that one kind of hit hard.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next assignment, I drove back home down the wrong side of Highway 210 facing oncoming traffic. You know how you get off the beltway and you have to go over 2-3 lanes to get into. I didn't do that. I turned right there.
Oh.
And I'm driving home. We had stormed that night, and I'm thinking, wow, the lights are. I said, must have been a really bad storm because the street lights are out. And
You're on the opposite side of 210.
Yeah, I'm facing the backside of the street.
Yeah, I understand what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm talking about the street the road that you're on, right?
Yeah. So I see cars
and people
coming.
are flying down 210.
Flying. So I'm looking, I'm like, it looks like, and I'm talking to myself.
Right.
I'm like, it looks as if those lights are coming towards me. And I'm talking, and finally this car stopped. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm on the wrong side. But if I really thought about it, was alert, I would have gotten over and then made the right. I didn't. I made a U-turn, went all the way back to Blue Plains, came back up the right side of 210. It was time. I was always the star consultant, always the team lead. And I never turned down an assignment because I'd heard early in this journey, if you turn down an assignment, they might not call you back. So I accepted every assignment, and I was gone every week.
Okay.
Every week. This went on for 2 years. Every week I was on the road in a different hotel, waking up, not knowing where I didn't know which side of the bed to get out on. I'm like, where am I?
Yeah.
I was in Dallas, didn't know where I was because I had just been in New Mexico. So I said, okay. I said, God, tell me what to do. He said, ask for a salary you don't think they'll give you. Now understand, I've never worked for money. I know people think that's crazy, but I always worked for an opportunity because if you do a job solely for the purpose of doing a good job, the rewards will come. And that's been my motto in life.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to ask for. So I looked at my budget. I said, what do I need? I just want to be able to pay my tithes, pay my bills, maybe shop every now and again, and give to something. And so I came up with a number. And I tossed it out there. They said, let me get back with you. They called me back within maybe an hour or two. Said yes. I said, well, that didn't work.
They answered too quick.
I said, so now what, God? I said, how do I know that this is from you? I was on a site visit, my last site visit, just delivered some, tough news. I'm this big bad chick, and I just told them, you're out of compliance and blah, blah, blah. I'm in the bathroom. After that, I need to step away because they text me to let me know that they needed a decision. I'm in the bathroom in tears because I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, I just don't need rhetoric. Just say yes or no. If this is from you, then fine. So didn't get an answer. So I called a friend. She didn't answer. Called another friend. She didn't answer. I called a person that I don't talk to a lot, but he answered. And I didn't expect him to because he's so busy in government in Tennessee. And he answered me. He said, did you ever ask God for something and this would fit the bill? Remember, I just want to pay my tithe, pay my bills, be able to give charitably, shop every now and again. Will this job do it? Yes. It was just as simple. I had the overwhelming sense of peace. I accepted that job, and it's been a journey. It's been a journey because the assignment that God sent me there to do was not what had typically happened in this entity. This entity was primarily to support call coverage for the hospital. Now I say no, this entity is to support the needs of the community. I need to build services whether they serve the needs of the hospital or not. And my leadership got on board. They supported me. They support me. I want to build an alternative medical practice. Everybody doesn't want Western medicine. They don't want drugs. They want to be treated in an alternative way. I want to build that. They support that. That's my next goal.
You know what I find interesting? When you said you asked God for something.
Yeah.
And you questioned if it was for you.
Yeah.
Your final question to God was, show me, because all I want to do, the first thing you said, and you said it twice in the telling of the story. The first thing you said was, all I want to do is pay my tithes. That was the first thing you said in your list of things that were a requirement that you needed to meet, while asking God to make it plain and clear.
Yeah.
And I find that really, really interesting. Another one of those golden threads is the weight that faith has in your life, right? It's unequivocal that it is the fiber of your very being. From the kindergarten teacher sending her kids to 5 blocks over to walk you to church, up until 2016 or 17 when you started the position, seeking that counsel. And like you said, you put all of those things first, and it worked into that, along with being so community minded in this journey, which speaks to the ultimate thing that, I mean, I've heard a lot at this point, and I'll be completely honest with you. When I have these conversations, you start to feel like you know a person, right? But unlike the viewers, like, I spend a lot of time looking at the individual. I look at, resumes, and I research articles, and I do everything that I can just to kind of pattern a flow. And it's kind of the reason why I asked the questions about different pockets of time,
Right.
because there are a lot of things, and who you are is so evident based on so many things that have been poured into you along the way. A lot of it in your youth, which is really, really, really interesting and really, really monumental about what they poured into you when you realized it, how you were functioning on this autopilot of the things that were told you could become for so long. Your kids, your husband, how you raised them, all of those things. And in that also has always been the strong sense of community. Mainly, I'm not speaking for you in terms of why it happened, but it's always been there. It's always there. And so that leads me wonderfully to what you're talking about in your role now, and after that, and in that role, it having such a community-minded perspective, but then crashing this, I don't even know if it's a glass ceiling, like just completely annihilating something that I don't know if anyone's ever tried before, and I would honestly say I'm certain that there has, and that's not to put any shade on anyone else. But before we get to that part, I want to talk about your community involvement, right? You talk about providing jobs for a community in which you live, where your office is. Again, it's one of the largest employers in the county, and the opportunities you're giving individuals. You mentioned that you were hired with the perspective of the job to be one thing, but community being at the forefront shifted that, and the support of the individuals there. So, and then I look at some of your community involvement, right? Like with NAACP, you were the economic chair. The same thing, and we'll talk about your we'll talk about your membership in Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I want to make sure I say it correctly. But there are a lot of these volunteer community-based things. The commissions. So let's talk about what drove that community focus.
So I always tell people I'm a transformational leader with servant leadership tendencies.
A transformational leader with servant leader tendencies.
Yeah. Because you cannot lead if you're not having an impact. So people that I lead, I want to educate and inform. I don't want you doing a job just to do a job. Don't come here from 8 to 4:30 to sit at a desk just to do. Let it be meaningful. Look at what your job means. So I try to transform and educate and inform them in that aspect. And anybody, my kids, my son told me, my oldest son told me once, he said, "Mom, I wish you would just spank us instead of talking to us." He said, "I think I could get over the spanking." He said, "But when I hear your words, you are a leader. Is it how leaders act? You are, is this how you would act? And make them think." I always want people to think. But servants, the Bible is the best business book you ever want to read, and I'm just clear on that. And so service, if everything we do is about us, where's the reward in that?
Yeah.
What are you doing? You've got so many gifts and talents, and you have no idea when you post something about books, about something you read or something, how that inspires other young men, not men who have nothing else to do, but you are a man you're doing so many things. You're so multifaceted, and I'm just so impressed with your humility in all that you are accomplishing and doing. But when I see you share that, you look at the people that are reading it. My son said, "I saw that guy that you were talking about, Mom. He read the book you read." I said, "He did." I was really surprised because I told him about it a couple months ago. So when you have that, God has gifted you with something. It's not for you.
Yeah.
What good does that do you? So I go do the point in time count and meet homeless individuals, unhoused individuals, and I treat them with respect. It is my goal. When I go out, I'm going to talk to you like you're somebody. I'm going to make you know that you're somebody. Your circumstances don't define you. And I do that. I call them Miss, Mr. How can I help you? What do you need from us? When I go and do and serve food, get the opportunity to serve food on Thanksgiving to people who otherwise wouldn't have a Thanksgiving meal, that's an honor. That's an honor. Service is an honor, right? And serving in my community, I told God I want to work, serve, and worship where I live.
Work, serve, and what that means, every part of you is fed where you live, which is, if we could say, back in Mississippi,
Community.
work, everything was in your community. Wow.
Walk to church. And so in my adult life, there is nothing good about saying, I work here, I've accomplished this, I have this. That means nothing. What have you done with it? So I'm passionate about children and the elderly. I have 3 foster children in Haiti. I pay for their schooling. I get so much pride from that. I have Shared Hope, Feed the Hungry. I contribute to that every month because I don't want a kid hungry. I've seen that. I don't want, what good does it do for me to have all of this and they not have? I contribute to lifestyles. I don't like knowing that there are people with a need and I have an opportunity to give to that need or remedy that need, and I don't do it. So I do it. So charitable contribution, service, it means a lot to me. It means a lot. The Kent Avenue corridor, when we have that block party, I want to be there. You know, when I took office as a council member, I went through my neighborhood to see what was needed. One of the main streets is so much trash. I knew that we didn't have the resources to go pick that trash up on that street.
Right.
So first thing I did, first Saturdays of the month, I go out and pick up trash. You know, to go pick that trash up on that street.
Right.
So first thing I did, first Saturdays of the month, I go out and pick up trash. You know, that you are doing something for somebody other than yourself. Where's the leadership in that?
Yeah.
And so, it's important to me. It's important.
Work, serve, and worship in my community.
Yep.
So, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
When was the moment you said, I'm going to run for city council?
I didn't.
Town council.
I didn't say it.
You didn't say it?
I didn't say it. People, former council member started talking to me. He served on the planning commission with me. I enjoyed that work. I learned a lot. And he was on the planning commission. And he said, did you ever think about, I said, nope, sure didn't. He come back, did you ever think about, nope, sure didn't. Somebody else asked me, said, God hadn't spoken to me about that yet. I said, I'm not that person. Then maybe 3 other folks said, your town needs you.
Your town needs you.
I said, they don't need me. I have nothing to offer in that capacity. I'm not that person. I couldn't even see it. I couldn't even envision it. And so it kept coming. People kept asking. I had about 15 people to approach me about that. And
Independent of each other.
Independent of each other.
Absolutely, because that's important.
I'm not even sure
that they even
if
knew
they
the other
knew
person was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I said, God, if this is something you want me to do, I said, you've got to make it clear. I said, I can't talk about myself. I can't go out there and sell myself to anybody. I'm who I am. And I don't talk about me well. I can't convince you to believe that I can do this. I said, I need the opportunity to do it. I didn't really look at it as a victory because nobody else was on the ballot. So I told God, I said, if this is from you, you got to make it clear. I don't want to have to talk about myself. I want to get the support, and I don't need it to take me forever to do it. So I got the application, submitted it. But before I submitted it, I had to get 10 people in my ward to support me.
Right.
Talk about God having a sense of humor. So I went and knocked on someone's door that I knew. They came out, and we're standing on the sidewalk talking about it. And they said, absolutely, I'll sign. And some people saw us talking. What are you doing? What's going on? Oh, she's going to run for council member, and she needs support. Oh, I'll sign it. The neighbor next to them, what are you doing? What's going on? Oh, yeah, I know. I've seen you. I'll sign it. I got all of those signatures in less than 25 minutes. And I'm looking up at God. I said, okay, what's next?
Right.
So I turned it in, and nobody else ran. I ran unopposed. And I told my son, I said, I don't count that as a victory. I didn't win over anybody. They didn't select me over. Nobody else ran. Is that a victory? I still ask myself that today because I've been asked to run for another office by several people. And I'm not confident that that's for me either. And so there. But however it landed, I'm there.
Well, I will say that it is a victory. And the reason it's a victory is one of two things can happen, and two things can be true, but one of two things can happen. One, there was a time to put this in. Some individuals attempted but couldn't get their 10 people, right? There are a lot of other factors that are possible. And I'll say it's a victory because I'm positive that someone else either wanted to do it, considered doing it, either couldn't get what they needed to get it done. But it's even more victory because you saw it to be done. And like everything else, like the DBA at the table, it wasn't dependent on someone else going with you or having an opponent. It was, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply for it. I'm going to put my name in the hat, and we'll go from there. So I absolutely count it as a victory because it's in line and it is 100% on par with everything we just spent the last almost 2 hours talking about. Going at it alone, not waiting, but wanting something and having an idea for something at the end. And it couldn't have been more perfect. Whether there was an opponent or not, the position and the role that you're in and how you function in that role couldn't be more perfect. And I'm saying that as a community member who, in my role as the NAACP, as a media, like I do a lot in this community, in this county. I see those things, and you couldn't have been more perfect for the role. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I've told you that privately. I'm telling you it publicly.
Thank you.
It was the right time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have been more proud.
I appreciate that.
And I'll also say, as an individual who moderates the candidate forums, right? You didn't have to participate, right? I usually, as from the branch, we send them out to everyone running. Sometimes when someone doesn't have an opposition, they don't choose to participate. Sometimes they do. but we also know that if there isn't an opponent, then their thought process is, well, I'll automatically have it. You'll just see my work. You don't really need to hear from me. And I thought I had profound respect for your position in saying, there's nobody on the other side of this, but there are topics, there are concerns from the organizations and from the community, and if I'm going to accept this role, I'd like to hear it.
Absolutely.
And answer those questions towards it. And so I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen your passion for it and what you planned to do with it, and I've watched it come to fruition.
Thank you.
And I can't say that a lot because I hear literally for the past, I'd say 6 or 7 years, I've literally heard every single individual in this county that ran for every single office. So I can tell you if a person is doing what they're saying or not.
Yeah.
And a lot of people haven't, and some have. But I'm not here to focus on the people who have or have not. I'm here to applaud you for doing it, doing what you say you're going to do, and even if it couldn't get done in whatever time frame you expected or thought or wanted, it wasn't short, or the community knew what you were attempting to do, and that's very important.
And it is important because I think the one thing that I struggle with, leadership is never about the individual. It's about the folk that you serve. And that's important to me, and I mean it. It's not rhetoric. It's not rhetoric to me. If a resident calls me, there's not a resident that has ever called me, text me, whatever, and he or she didn't get a response that day. That day. If I couldn't answer, I called you back real quick. You know, the moment I was free, I called you back. I heard what you had to say. I'm not going to lie to you. I can't do that. I can't make that change. But let's see what we can do. Fixing sidewalks, walking the neighborhood with folk, you know, fixing, you know, potholes, you know. Okay, Director Stahl, can you meet me at 7 o'clock? Can you meet me at 7:30 and we walk this before I go to work? Yes, Councilwoman, I'll meet you. And that's it for me.
Yeah.
You don't have to see me. You don't have to hear me. I don't care. Am I doing what you need me to do? That's important. I don't want a photo op. People say, oh, there are going to be photo ops. I'm not coming for that.
Yeah.
I won't come. If that's the only benefit for me being present, you won't see me, and you watch.
Yeah.
You don't see me because that's not important to me.
Yeah.
What can I do to make a difference? If it's my ward or not, if they call me, I'm answering. I'm going to get you an answer.
Yeah.
It might not be what you like, but I'm going to get you an answer.
And I will attest to that. I called you about, I think it was, I wanted to make sure that you got an invitation to something. You had no idea why I was calling you, but you answered only to tell me that you were in another country on vacation.
I was.
I was like, okay, first off, I don't like to talk to anybody on vacation, especially if it's cold and they're in somewhere warm. But I'm only validating what you're saying about the constituency and how you approach that.
Yeah.
So, the town of La Plata was incorporated in 1888. In 2021, 133 years after the year it was incorporated, the first African American individual became a council person in the town of La Plata. Were you aware of that when you decided to run?
No, I wasn't, and my CEO made me aware of it. I said, are you sure? And he says, yes. So I called up the town clerk and I asked her, and she goes, yeah, you are.
Yeah.
It didn't say anything. It didn't resonate as anything. I didn't want to be delineated that way, and let me tell you why. Because it means that the work we do is something because we're African American. No, we do good work.
Absolutely.
I don't care what skin is on us. We are excellent.
Absolutely.
And don't carve me out looking for something different because I'm African American. I'm going to do a good job. We do a good job. Don't hold me accountable for your misperception of us as individuals. Don't worry about any degrees or anything like that, because many folk don't have them and they serve, and we serve well. So don't make that an exception. Oh, it's only because she's this is only happening because, no, it's happening because I'm putting in the work.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't want I didn't want that to be something I walked around saying. Because being who I am, and I am all African American, but I think I would have done a good job if my skin color was pink, purple, or blue.
Yeah.
But people don't think like that. They want to, especially, I don't know if you saw what happened with Mayor Brandon Scott.
I did.
How is that diversity higher? It blew my mind.
It's
Don't make
completely
this
ridiculous.
about that. It's so ridiculous. And I was so hurt for him.
Absolutely.
Because you minimized every effort this man. Don't minimize my efforts.
Yeah.
Don't do that. And so I didn't talk about that, but I went in being who we are. Being who you would have been had it been you.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I'm going to be excellent. I'm going to research. I'm coming prepared for every meeting. I'm going to ask intelligent questions. If I don't know something, I am going to make sure you know I don't know. Educate me, because I tried to educate myself before I showed up and I just didn't get it. I don't understand it. Can you help me? And I come prepared. I'm not going to ask questions just to make me look smart. If I don't have a question to ask, I have nothing. I'm good with that. I'm good with not having a question because I do my due diligence.
Yeah.
I went back through all of the town council meetings before I stepped on that dais. And I knew if this came up again, at least I know it happened and I'll know what they're talking about. I looked that stuff up. If I have a meeting Tuesday, I will start preparing. I'll look at it. It didn't require a lot of effort. I know what they're talking about here. There's some background to this that I'm not familiar with, and just in case this background comes up, I want to be able to address it. So I'm going to prepare. That's who I am. It's not because I'm a black female or anything. It's just who I am wired to be. That ain't what you asked me.
No, it is. It is the absolute. It is the answer to the question, and I'm going to validate my question by saying most people who break glass ceilings don't break the glass ceiling because it's there. They break the glass ceiling because the job needs to be done, and they believe the job needs to be done by them, right? And so the reason I asked the question is because I had a feeling that it didn't play into that. It's not to say that you didn't care about it, but that it wasn't at the forefront for you. You knew you were capable of doing this job. The community told you, at least 10 people told you within 25 minutes that you're capable of doing this job. The other 15 people, independent of themselves, of the other individuals, told you were capable of doing this job, and you knew you were, with all of the preparation that you had coming into this, right? Working at the county level, doing planning and commissioning, and doing the same thing
So this is town level.
I know what I'm saying, but you there was a position at the county level, economic development, right? And so there's a commissioning level, right? So you had what it needed to do this job. It is my job, right? In my position and who I am, to tell you afterwards that that ceiling was annihilated by you. And it's also my job to tell everyone else that something incredible happened over here, especially because they didn't know that, right? And one of the things that is very important to me, even which is the creation of this interview series in the first place, along with everything else, is making sure that we don't overlook some of those things that we would give so much credit to somewhere else, right? I can't give credit to the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, for being the first African American governor of the state of Maryland, and not be equally as proud of the first African American city council person in the town of La Plata, right? In the same way that I had to be equally as proud of, former President Obama, right? Like, we can't deny that these things happened, and the gravity by which they happened, and the individuals in those positions were more than qualified to do them. Watched them firsthand, and I've said it 3 or 4 times before, and I will continue to say how proud I am of you in that position.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And sometimes it is that people will have to say it for you.
You have to.
Because it's not my nature.
Right.
If I'm given a job, I want to do a good job. I'm going to do a good job. It's not that I want to, I will do a good job. I won't do less than that. And I do hear people tell me that. I do hear it. And I'm glad that they do, because it's not what I walk around thinking.
Right.
Right. It's not what I walk around advertising. I just want to do the work. That's always me. Give me the opportunity. I'm going to do the work.
So we're coming to a close, but there's one thing that I wanted to talk about. You are a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Yes.
Why, and what does that mean to you?
So when I was in 2nd grade, on the playground,
wow,
her name was Miss Carter. She had kitten heels, beautiful A-line dress, hair modestly done, earrings. And she was always poised, soft-spoken. But she was a member of the NAACP. She worked in her church. She was in the community serving and doing things. And I admired that. Every time I saw her at school, same dress style. A-line dress, kitten heels, modestly dressed, no heavy makeup, always presented herself like a lady. But in the community, she was on the NAACP. She was working and serving in church. She attended church, the same church my kindergarten teacher went to. She attended church, and she was doing stuff in the community. And I said, I want to be like her. And in my pea brain, when I learned that she was an AKA, I associated that character, the community service, the way she carried herself, with being an AKA. So in my mind, I'm going to be an AKA because I'm going to dress like her. I'm going to serve like her. I'm going to go to church, and I'm going to be a part of my community. I'm going to do things in my community. Never wanted to be an educator, but I wanted to be known for working in my community. And that's what I thought an AKA was. perception is reality to the individual.
Absolutely.
So I grew up thinking that's what an AKA was. Then I heard about the deltas, and I said, well, I still want to be an AKA. That's the so yeah, but there were other, members in the community that were different D9. But in my mind, I grew up associating that with AKA.
Yeah.
And I love to tell that story because that's it.
That's
you
awesome.
when I got to college, Sigma Gamma Rhos asked me, Zetas asked me, but I had to be an AKA because this is what they did.
It was it. That was it. I spent 22 years in the Air Force, and I've obviously I didn't pledge any of fraternities or anything like that. And so of my friends and family that my daughter just crossed over, she's a Delta.
I know.
I always find that there's something in there, whichever sorority they choose or chooses them, it's always what I've found the right fit for them.
Absolutely.
And like they knew.
Absolutely.
I know it's this. Like the Air Force, and that's a whole other story.
Right,
it wasn't a thing like I knew I wanted to be an airman, and I sure enough wasn't going to do 22 years. And the gentleman on the other side of this camera can tell you that 22 years in the Air Force was not it. But I admire the individuals, especially in the D9, who find their people and find their calling within their fraternities and sororities. And so that's why I asked. I wanted to make sure we talked specifically about that, because I know how important it is to individuals being a member of such historic organizations.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to serve. People get it wrong all the time. It's not about the colors. It's not about the affiliation. It's not about the sisterhood. It's what you do with it. We are serving communities. We're giving scholarships. We're giving healthcare services. We're educating. We're transforming. We're talking about economics. We're talking about voting. We're educating and informing on the importance of voting. So we are doing all of those things that impact an individual from a socioeconomic perspective. And so this is a vehicle. It's a vehicle to do what you do. If you're not about service, you'll see that they may be members, but they're not active members.
Right.
But people who join for the right reason to serve, you're going to see them all the time out there doing something. You're going to see them. And that's the good part, because we get to serve our community. We have resources that we're not having to grovel for. We get money to pour back into the community. We get to, meet the unhoused. We get to help the women who are looking to find their way, the children with our YL Institute. We get to give college scholarships. We get to serve and help. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah.
You have an opportunity. I don't have to go look for that opportunity.
It
exists.
It's built in.
It's built in.
Yeah.
With the NAACP, I did the health and economics.
Yes.
And so you had a venue to do and serve and give back. That's important. If you are not giving back, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of having the position you have if you don't have the opportunity to share with it? God didn't bless you with wealth to hold on to it. He didn't bless you with all that talent and gifts you have to not give it back. And you're giving it back. You are sharing yourself with folk. How wonderful do you feel? You're not talking about how much money or how many assets you have. You are beaming when you get to impart wisdom, even if it's to one person.
Yeah.
If you set the example for one person, you've done something phenomenal. And that's what AKA does for me.
That's what it does for you. So this is my final question.
Sure.
And this one is important, because in these conversations I get to hear a lot, and the viewers get to hear a lot about who you are, what drove you to be what you are, the accomplishments, the breaking of the ceilings, the degrees, and all of those things. But there's a human side to everyone, right? And that human side, people aren't 1,000% that, right? So my question is this: everyone has to have a hobby. No one works 24/7, even if it's 23/7. They have to do something in an hour to either relax, take their brain off, have a hobby, sport, like any of those things. What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing? And it can't be serving, it can't be creating jobs. It has to be the thing that just flat out brings you joy.
I love cooking for my sons. I love cleaning. I love decorating. I like to work in the yard. I love planting and seeing something grow beautifully. I like to play golf. That's fun for me. I love to read. I love to sit. I can sit by large bodies of waters for hours, and I am at my best. That does it for me. Give me a large body of water. Let me sit there. I'm in heaven.
And that's it. Dr. Ward, I'm appreciative of you for accepting the invitation to talk about yourself today, allowing me to beam with my pride for you and what you've done in this community, what you continue to do. And so we're shooting on location here at Selby's Grab and Go. So I want to definitely say a thank you to Chef Kendall for providing the space, to Brocky McKnight for his production work with the cameras. Obviously, African American Voices is brought to you by the Charles County NAACP. And so again, as with all of those, I thank you again. We appreciate you. We'll share more books. I just finished one of your books, and when this is done, I've got to share this book with you that is incredible.
Okay.
And so with that, thank you all for showing.